You listen to the AZ Wildcats podcast, brought to you by DraftKings, America's #1 sportsbook app. All right, now joined by the great William Brad Alice. I am Mike Luke. Hello, William.
Hello, Michael.
All right, so we've as longtime Arizona fans, we've experienced our fair share of first round upsets over the years. And I still believe, in my opinion, the worst one will always be the Santa Clara one, because that team to me was significantly better than this team. And as you correctly pointed out on Twitter, this was not NBA, all NBA Steve Nash at this point. That point, this was a different dude. That
team was something like 18-14, finished like 4th in the West Coast Conference, had to win the tournament. Arizona had beat them by like 50 the year before at McHale. Right. And yes, they had Steve Nash. Nash had 4 points going into the final 4 minutes. He hit 6 of 8.
Right. And he was 1 of 8 from the field. So, I mean,
it was not a good team. In fact, I remember a sophomore at the U of A, when they bracket came out, I'm like, oh, they did Arizona a favor. That's a 16. Whereas I could argue this Princeton team was like an 8-loss team from the Ivy. In other years, they might have been a 14. It just happens that there were a lot of there weren't many upsets in conference tournaments.
Right.
So, you didn't get a lot of bad teams. In fact, a couple of the 16 seeds, and I'm not even talking about FDU, were probably 14s in other tournaments. But this happened to be a bad year. That being said, no, Arizona should have beat this team. They're up 12. You got to learn to finish games. To me, it's much closer, though, to the Miami of Ohio loss or even the Oklahoma loss in 99 than it is the Santa Clara loss.
The problem that I had, though, and I think this team was exposed in a variety of different ways, and we talked about this, though, is that, first of all, the team looked shook. You found out, too, you didn't really have many dogs on this team, for lack of a better term. And at the end, nobody, and again, people are beating up Courtney Ramey for that last shot. I have no problem with it. At least he wanted it. You had a lot of guys out there that Kirk Kriisa was terrible. Pelle Larsson was terrible. Azuolas Tubelis put up a good stat line, but he didn't want that shot at the end. So you found out, too, that this was a very emotionally fragile team, I think, for lack of a better term there, Brad.
It reminded me of the Xavier game, the Sweet 16 game, when the only player who wanted the ball was Alonzo Trier.
Right.
A lot of people kill Sean Miller for that loss, and there's some reasons to kill Sean, because they didn't feed Lowry Markkanen. Lowry did not want the ball in that basketball game. No one did except for Trier. And that was this game. I think there were some plays down the stretch where it looked like Tubelis won the ball. They just couldn't get him the ball. I'm not absolving Tommy Lloyd. I think he made one huge mistake, and that was not playing Kylan Boswell 25, 30 minutes. Kirk Kriisa was obviously injured. Kirk Kriisa is also limited. We knew that. We've been talking since summer that we thought there was a chance Boswell could cut into his minutes, and he did a little bit. But Boswell's a guy who is yet, and again, I'm gonna preface this. People who follow me on Twitter, I watched the game on my phone at Disneyland at California Adventure, so I do not see a lot of nuance. There were possessions where I couldn't tell who had the ball. That being said, didn't look like Boswell was shirking from the moment. He should have played more than what he played, 15 minutes.
You know what I believe?
That is on Tommy Lloyd. But the rest of it, this team is what we thought they were. And they were a team that legitimately could have lost in the first round or could have cut down the nets, although I find stringing 6 big wins together was going to be difficult. Should they have gone to the Sweet 16? Yeah, probably. But this is not – it's not baffling. This is not, whatever it was. 88, 92, 93, where this team should not have lost. This team was always susceptible.
He was far from the only problem there, but I do believe that this team needs to move on from Kirk Kriisa. And the reason why, he's done some very good things, but I do believe if he comes back, he's going to play 30 minutes a game. And the keys need to be Boswell's at this point, in my opinion. And on top of that, when you watch Kerr, he's a mess shooter. He's not a good defender. He talks the entire game, generally can't back it up. He's just kind of an okay player, and at Arizona, you should be able to get better than Kirk Kriisa, in my opinion.
Kriisa would be a nice player off the bench on a really good team. an emotional leader who can knock down some big shots, which is weird that he did. Again, he was hurt, and he was hurt last year. So to me, part of the book still is out on Kirk Kriisa, tournament player. And we can get
But
to
at the end of the day, he's 3 of 24 and 8 turnovers and 4 assists. I mean,
he should be a spark off the bench. He and Pelle Larsson, that is a good role for them. So if next year, if this team is Boswell and KJ Lewis and transfer wing, and Kriisa is happy playing 25 minutes off the bench, bring him back. And if he's not, wish him well at playing overseas, because he's not an NBA player. We know that. Pelle's not an NBA player. Probably none of these guys are NBA players, although, again, we can talk about whether Tubelis or Ballo can find a role as an 11th guy. But this is a team, it was a flux year. We knew that. They overperformed their talent. Although I would argue they underperformed their talent in their losses, and they are what they are. Disappointing that this team was good enough to be a Sweet 16 team. Any other expectations? Ridiculous, because they weren't just that good. And anyone who thinks that a 2 seed should be in no team should be in the Final Four unless you're 1990 UNLV. I mean, it's such a crapshoot. But that being said, this team.
0-1 Arizona.
What's that?
0-1 Arizona should have been in the Final Four.
That was a 9-loss team. I granted.
But it was different. That was a weird.
Yeah, but there aren't many teams you penciled that in. That one Kentucky team that was 30-1 or whatever. But for the most part, with a team like this, Sweet 16 should be your goal, and they fell short.
All right, now with looking ahead though a little bit, Azuolas Tubelis, and this is why you can't always go by stats. I thought Azuolas Tubelis was fantastic. So again, I don't want to diss Azuolas Tubelis here. I would have voted for Jaime Jaquez for Player of the Year. I think they got that one right. But what you also have seen, and I think it's fair to say at this point, and again, he had put up good numbers. Azuolas is not the guy that wants the ball in the big moment. And there are some guys like that. He's a very, very good player. He's an All-American. But you could tell at the end of the game when Arizona needed a bucket, he had the open 16-footer. He takes this hesitation dribble, one dribble in. Then he gets packed into the end, and then he doesn't touch the ball again. I think we also have enough now to know that he isn't that dude. He doesn't have that kind of makeup, and there's some people like that. Michael Dickerson's one of the greatest players to ever come through here. And again, Mike D's a lot better than Tubelis. I'm not saying that. But you also know kind of at this point what he is. If he's going to be your alpha, you're probably not going to go really far.
Well, there's other than mental makeup, and I think you have a legitimate claim there that he's not an alpha. He's, for the modern game especially, he's not a guy, he can't be your number one. And he's just, the problem is he's not a Derek Williams power forward. Right. Derek Williams was a small forward who could defend the four, really. Tubelis is a guy whose game is 95% relying on a point guard or a guard who can get him the ball in a position to score. And if you do that, he can score. Right. And I think you could argue that if he comes back and they make a decent run, he's a top 10 Arizona player of all time. But he's not suited to be that guy. But guess what? Other guys, you couldn't rely on Channing Frye that way either, because Channing Frye's game was completely relying on getting him the ball. That is why we knew this. And once we realized Adama Ball was not going to develop, they were lacking that wing scorer who could put the ball on the floor.
They needed him to be able to be,
because Larson wasn't.
They needed him to be that guy.
Ramey isn't that guy. Kerr is certainly not that guy. You needed a Mathurin. I think if Dalen Terry had come back, he might have been able to be that guy. Guard play wins you games, especially versatile guard play. For as great a shooter as a guy like Salim was, he could still get in the lane. He could still drive.
He wasn't limited to just shooting. Yes.
If you look at the great Arizona teams, they always had 2 or 3 guys who could do that. Elliot could get a bucket from any spot on the floor. Miles with the leaner. Bibby with the drive. Jason Terry with the step back. Jason Gardner with the step back. they just didn't have that guy. They had a bunch of shooters who weren't great shooters. They were good shooters. And they had a bunch of post players. And so at the end of the day, unless you got the perfect matchup, you were in trouble. And once Princeton committed to that double team on Tubelis, Arizona looked a little lost. That being said, they had a 12-point lead with 6 to play and got outscored whatever it was, 20-something to 8. And that's inexcusable. That's the biggest issue with this team is their inability to close out games.
Right.
This team could have
because
been.
They don't have that closer.
Yeah, they could have been 28-2 if they could close out a basketball game,
right.
which includes starting the second half strong because they did that every other game too. But at the end of the day, this was a team that overperformed their talent, and I think that is a credit to Tommy Lloyd. But unfortunately, oftentimes when you do that, you falter in the tournament, and then you take criticism if you're Tommy.
All right, and again, I'm all in on Tommy Lloyd. These are coaches have, times where they've got to figure out what they're going to do. What they're going to do. People move on. People, he's going to have some interesting roster decisions this offseason for sure. Now, let's talk a little bit of recruiting here. CSPK Cat says, do you think Lloyd's recruiting has been good? I'll put Lloyd's recruiting as average at this point. I think at this point, losing out on Cody Williams, I believe, was a big loss. That is the type of kid that you need to be able to get. If you have an in-state 5-star kid that you're recruiting from his junior year on, you have to be able to get him, in my opinion. And you can't lose him to Colorado. That being said, 2024 to me is the class that I believe that you're really going to find out what Lloyd's recruiting chops are. You already got Jamari Phillips in the bag, high 4-star kid, depending on which service you look at. And then Carter Bryant, all indications are that he's going to be an Arizona guy. Well, you certainly have to be able to get him first. But this is the class, whether it's with transfers, whether it is that you need to bring in a top 10 class, Brad, in my opinion.
Yeah, or close there. Yeah. Top 20. And I think what you have to do is again, there were some roster construction issues here. And I will say this. I've been watching the World Baseball Classic.
Mm-hmm.
They have interviewed several
scouting
players,
a little bit out there.
More so just I like international competition.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Right.
If you were Kirk Kriisa, if you were Azuolas Tubelis, if you were Umar Ballo, if you were Pelle Larsson, what'd you do this summer?
Right.
You played for your international team, whether it was the U20, U21. I mean, Kirk Kriisa went up against Luka Doncic.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what Kirk Kriisa probably was not doing 4 years ago in Estonia? Watching the NCAA tournament.
Right.
You and I grew up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a teacher who dragged in the
that brought in the computer or the TV that was set on the thing with the wheels?
Yeah. I took my dad's Watchman to school.
Right.
I raced home to watch the tournament after school. Now we're going to have a lot of guys who are going to be like, why was Dad sweating that 15-2 matchup? Well, it's because maybe they had a little bit of money on it. We grew up with that. With the exception of, for most of these guys, NBA 1, college basketball 2. They grew up with it. And when Arizona, when U.S. players go to play international ball, what do? They go to camp, they get cut, they make the tryout, they're on the plane 2 days later, they play the tournament, and they're done.
Right.
These guys have grown up with international basketball.
Mm-hmm.
They've not grown up with. So I think when you saw people talking about lack of fire, lack of energy, I think that's part of the problem. We saw this for a long time in the NBA with European players. It took Dirk to win a title as the alpha from Europe, and we've only seen he and Giannis really do it. Other guys, have played complementary roles. I don't count Akeem because he played 4 years at the University of Houston and won a national title there. But I think that is part of it. I don't think these guys have grown up living and dying with college basketball. Now, does that mean you abandon international recruiting? Not at all. There's too many good players. But you better make sure you got a couple, quote unquote, dogs who grew up in Baltimore, Chicago, Phoenix, downtown LA,
right,
who grew up watching the NCAA tournament, who that's a big deal to them. You look at, I'm going to use a good example. Look at that Arizona team that went to the Elite Eight with Derek Williams. Solomon Hill had been following the Wildcats since he was like 6 years old. That meant a lot. You don't think it meant a lot to Mike Bibby to go to a Final Four and win a title because his dad did? His dad he didn't like.
Right.
So I think there's something we said there. Again, you don't turn down an Azuolas Tubelis. I still think Henry Visar is going to be really good. But yeah, you got to find that balance. And again, it's hard with transfers to figure out who's what. But yeah, I think Henderson had the dog mentality and have the dog ability. I think Ramey had dog ability. I'm not sure he had dog attitude. So you got to find some of those guys, and that's going to be incumbent on Tommy Lloyd to be a little bit better in the transfer portal and a little bit better with his roster construction.
I got a question about that, but I want to get to. But first, Mountain Mike's Pizza. I was in Sacramento this past week, and guess what I saw up there? Mountain Mike's Pizza. It is not just an Oracle. What's that?
Saw the picture you posted.
It is not just at Oracle and Wetmore. It is all around Arizona right here. You can head over to Mountain Mike's Pizza or to their Mesa, Chandler, or Tucson locations to place your next order. Reminder, new Diehards get $50 vouchers upon signing up. And again, you got lunch buffets, great food. William Brad Alice has been there before. I have been there before. It's very good food. Again, check it out. Great TV setup. If you're a family man like Brad, you can bring the kids there and watch, or you can go there and you can watch, or you can go there with your buddies. Good times. And Tap and Bottle. Tap and Bottle, as you know, good call. Scott and Rebecca, great job up there. Or up there, you got the Northwest location, or you got the downtown. You can many times get Four Peaks there. Great environment. Support local, as always. But again, good stuff. Tap and Bottle. Check it out. And great stuff. All right. I have a question here. Watching the players up close, it throws me off a little bit, and maybe this is just me. I'm not real keen on players calling him Tommy. That to me is a little too, like watching him and go back and forth with Kirk Kriisa, and Kirk Kriisa would say something like, Tommy, I told you over. That to me blurs a little bit of a line. Probably doesn't mean anything, but what do you think about that?
I don't know. I still remember a lot of guys calling Loot, Coach O. Right. A lot of guys called him Sean.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is more surprising.
That's true.
I don't know. Yeah, there's the old joke that you don't want your quarterback to have a Y in his name. Maybe you don't want your coach to have, it's Rick Pitino, not Ricky P. Although I always call him Ricky P.
By the way, I love that hire. By the way, I think he's going to kill it at St. John's.
Dude, how good is the Big E? If Providence can make a good hire here,
right?
And I'm not sure the guy up the road couldn't be more successful at Providence than he could be at ASU, but that's another story for another time. But you move Cooley, who we know is a really good coach, but Providence has always been limited with what they could do. Going to Georgetown, you got Miller, you got McDermott. That's a fun league,
right?
It was a fun league this year. It's a better league, and there's something right about St. John's and Georgetown basketball being good,
right?
I'm a little older than you. I grew up where you had Big Monday, and then you'd watch. If you missed the game the night before, you'd watch it on ESPN the next morning. And I remember those St. John's Carnesecca teams, and John Thompson's team. Scared. Those guys were scary, scary men. And then you throw in Villanova and Pitt. And, it's just good for the league. Now we need to get Pittsburgh and Syracuse back in the Big East and just make it all right.
Right. No, I agree with you entirely. Right there. Now, going forward, then, I think we're also going to find out a little bit, though, about, like I said, the recruiting. KJ Lewis coming in this year. I'm curious to see. I like him. I think he gets that big physical athletic guard type. But I think in the portal, though, and again, I want him. I would like Tommy Lloyd. And keep in mind, this is Mike Luke. Tommy Lloyd knows a lot more than I do. But I don't want to just rely on diamonds on the rough from Macedonia. I'm totally cool with getting those guys. But I don't want 3 Philly Bees. You need to get guys in here, in my opinion, in the portal that can make a difference. I mean, you look at Texas right now. That entire team is loaded with guys that they got in the transfer portal. Marcus Carr, Serge Ibari, Timmy Allen, all those guys. You can get those guys out there. They don't necessarily need to be pros, but they can be dogs.
Yeah, I think that's what you need to do. Now you need to find some guys who are tough, and I think again, I don't know what they're losing. So again, if you lose Tubelis, it's a different team. But if let's say, I'm going to assume you get Tubelis, Pella, and Umar back.
Right.
If so, what I want now is I need a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
some coach's kid from a mid-major in the Midwest would suit me just fine. I need a grinder. And whether that's a grinder at wing or grinder at the 4, I want a guy who, again, I'm being totally, what do you call it, superficial here, but I want Chicago, Baltimore, Philly. I mean, yes, you can find those guys in Phoenix. But I want a guy who, again, a dog. And whether that guy is 6'7", undersized, shot blocker, a Jordan Poole type, or whether that guy is Michael Wright, 6'7", 280 of all muscle. I need some toughness. And you need wing scoring. So again, I'm unfortunately I got to be out on Adama Ball. I'm assuming he's gone.
Right.
I don't know I don't think Philly B's that guy yet. But yeah, you need an elite wing. Again, can KJ Lewis be that guy? Maybe, but I'd like to have another one.
Right. I'd like to have a couple of them, because then if one of them isn't good, then you got another one that you can go with.
Or if one guy gets in the foul trouble, or if, depending on matchups, you can go like they did last year, 6'7", 6'7".
It's nice having a Hassan Adams as a freshman coming off the bench.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it was nice having Terry and Matherin on the floor at the same time.
Right.
That's what you need.
All right. Now, Circle K. Brad Alice, you have been to Circle K. Is this correct?
Not today.
All right, but you have been there before.
Within the last 24 hours, yes.
All right. Here's the deal with Circle K. You talk about a place for the common man. In my opinion, the toughest intersection in all of Tucson is Grant and Oracle. But you know what you're going to find there? A Circle K. You know where you're also going to find Circle Ks? In the richest intersections in the city. That's what they're about. They're about serving the customer right here. And again, we're excited to partner with our friends at Circle K. To kick things off, we've teamed up for an amazing giveaway opportunity. Text PHNX to 31310 for an opportunity to win a $500 gift card. See show notes for details. Again, you can get beer, you can get soft drinks, you can get food, you name it. Good prices right there. What say you, William Brad Alice?
Well, Mike, I know you have played basketball at a certain sporting champs. I live down the street. My son plays baseball at that park next door. Do you know how many Gatorades I have bought at the Circle K there? Lots. And then again, my wife is addicted to the Polar Pop. So yeah, I'm Circle K all the time.
Yeah, no, we're Circle K, and that's just the way of life right here. And one more thing, Four Peaks. I was driving today, and as I was driving, I was behind a Four Peaks vehicle that I texted out right there. Now, again, here's the deal. With Four Peaks, it's great for some spring training games as well. You can many times get them at the tap and bottle watch parties. But here's the thing, though. You're going to have the best place. All right, you got something here for the Arizona Cardinals coming up. New coach, new GM. The Cardinals have the 3rd pick in the draft. It's a big opportunity for our team. The best place to take in this pivotal moment and the rest of the NFL draft on April 27th is at Four Peaks 8th Street Pub. Must be 21 and up to enjoy responsibly. Four Peaks right there. So again, check it out. All right, now let's talk a little bit though about. I want to get your take on conference expansion. Then we're going to get to a little bit of Arizona football. Let me ask you this, Brad, just from your opinion, you got youngsters running around the house. They probably got their phones. They got all that. If the Pac-12 signs a conference or signs a deal that is 75% streaming, isn't that a disaster?
No.
At this point, you don't think so. Tell me why.
No. What is it now?
It's pretty much all linear.
I mean, I don't know how many times kids don't watch TV. My kids do not watch TV. They do not surf to find games. I think if you are on a big enough platform, and Pac12 Network was not a big enough platform, but if you have 75% of your games on Amazon, on Apple, I don't think it's a disaster that it was even 5 years ago. Everyone is streaming now.
Do you think that's better than being on ESPN, though, and national networks for 75% of your
No, I don't think it's but I don't think it's a disaster. I don't think it's a death knell. As long as you have some traction, yeah. You have to make it easy to find your games. And here's part of the problem. Pac-12 Network. I have DirecTV. So I can't get it on DirecTV. So I use someone else's account. I get it on my phone. I then have to open an app on my TV. I can't even stream it directly. I have to open an app. I can't subscribe to it secondarily. If they had offered me the Pac12 Network as an app, like I buy, I don't know, Hulu, Apple, Amazon, I would have gotten it 5 years ago, 7 years ago. They didn't. So I pirated it for 7 years.
Let me ask you this, though. Why do you think all of the other conferences, though, preferred to be on linear cable, and the Pac-12 is backed into a corner, basically, and they're having to try to sell streaming as an option right now when none of the other conferences pushed for that?
Because they already have that ESPN option. And again, I think 5 years from now, we may look at this completely different. No. Is it ideal? No. But I don't think it's the death knell it was 5 years ago. I think you look at the state of the conference now, a lot of that is because the Pac-12 Network was so hard to find. And it was poorly run. So if I missed the Arizona, a few years ago, I was at an event. I missed the Arizona-Oregon game. Oh, my God, I'll catch football. I'll catch the replay. They didn't show a replay till Thursday.
Right.
I could watch the game from 3 years ago 5 times between then. Why is there a show like this not on the Arizona Pac-12 Network channel?
Right. No, I agree. I agree with that.
Why are you and Kyle Dodd not debating the game, or whoever? The people they hired were good. I mean, Muehlbach's good. Yam was really good. KO was really good.
Right.
But why is KO and Matt Muehlbach not doing an Arizona show? Or why is KO and Townsend Orr not doing a USC show?
Right.
It was, they were supposed to be these small little regional networks, and they didn't put anything on there. That being said, and again, James, I see what you're saying, but if you're appealing to 18-year-old kids, they don't watch TV. They don't flip channels, and unless I'm confused, I know a bunch of kids they don't even know their parents have a TV. Again, if you could get every game on ESPN, sure, that's great. Because guess what? Arizona ESPN also has great streaming.
Right.
That ESPN Plus, but I don't think it's a death knell if the money's right. Now, that's my bigger concern. You have 75% of your games on, what was that one network that was being floated out there? It was like it was
ION,
or it was like a homeless man's Bally's, and you're doing that for $12 million, then that's a disaster. But if you can get the 30-something million and 75% of games on Amazon, I don't think it's a disaster.
Right.
But I'm not confident they have that. Again, I think that's the bigger concern is you're going to get 10 million from FS1. You're going to get 12 million from Ion TV, and you're at 22 million with 75% of your games streaming, and that is a disaster. But if you're at 35 million and you've got 25% of your games on Fox or ESPN and 75 on Amazon, and it in the NFL is the only thing on Amazon, you don't think Amazon's going to push that to the moon?
Right. Now, let me ask you this.
Ion TV could push it to the moon, and none of us would know because I don't know where to find Ion TV.
All right, William Brad Alice, I'm asking you right now, would you rather be in the Big 12 or the Pac-10?
What's the money?
Let's say the money for the Big 12 is $31 million and the Pac-12 is $26.5. Let's just say that.
Book me my flight to Lawrence, Kansas.
Yes! William Brad Alice hopping in right there.
But if the money is close, then I think you stay in the Pac-10.
Because
at 30 million to 31.5, yeah, 29.5.
But let me challenge you a little bit there. Doesn't that Arizona then, without the LA schools, this is essentially the Mountain West when it comes to basketball. Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball. And if you're on streaming as well, what's the other team in the conference that really matters in basketball?
You got to hope you got to count on Oregon and eventually Washington.
But again, isn't that the Mountain West at that point? Aren't you really kind of boxed into a corner?
Yeah, but I think there's something to be said. Again, I'm assuming you're going to bring San Diego State in. There's something to be said to being able to drive to at least 2/3 of the road games. I think being in the same time zone. Again, if the money's close, but if the money's not close, then yeah, you get to the Big 12. You're going to be an instant rival with Kansas, and it'll be interesting because I think Arizona, in a weird way, could actually make some strides in football, by playing the Oklahoma State. Now, again, something to consider though: how long is the Big 12 going to be a premier basketball league? You'll always have Kansas, but
The big
10
yeah,
years
but
ago, Baylor was a wasteland.
more like 15 or 20. Scott Drew's been really good there.
Scott Drew has been very good there. Who else? TCU has been good under Jamie Dixon. Who else? West Virginia has been good under Beeline and Huggins. What happens when Huggins retires, which is going to happen anytime.
Houston, though, we got bringing in Houston,
Cincy. That is interesting. Yeah. So again, I would love to see the Big 12 if it's feasible, but I would also mourn the loss of the Big 10 or the Pac-10.
And I got to. All right, fair enough. I do, but isn't the Pac-10 basically dead without the LA schools?
No, but it's severely hurt. Yeah.
Right. All right. Now, let's talk. Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit of Arizona football here. Spring practices here. Brad, this is, again, I think Arizona can get 7 wins this year. But just looking at the roster makeup right now, especially on offense, I think it's pretty hard not to be excited about the potential for this team.
Yeah, I still think they got a lot of holes to fill. I think when the smoke cleared, they took a minus in the transfer portal this year.
Right.
Although I think the bulk of the guys they lost were not important, but they have to have some guys really develop because they didn't bring in a ton of talent. So yeah, but is 7 games possible? Yeah, this is we're going to really learn a lot about Jedd Fisch and his staff because they made great strides last year. I know some people disappointed. That was a completely different product on the field last year. But they were still gave up 49 points 3 times.
Right.
Were blown out. So yeah, we need to see a continue evolvement. So far, so good. They didn't, but again, I'm just a little underwhelmed with both the high school recruiting class, which we knew was not going to duplicate the year before, but they didn't do as much damage in the portal for every, Flo and those guys. They didn't bring in enough in my mind.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going, what's a realistic win expectation for you?
I think you put the over under on 5.5 and you kind of have to hit the over, but
right.
The schedule's tough. And they do have some glaring holes. Now, if they can get that offensive line settled and it looks like it could be very good, then this could be a dynamic offense. And then you just have to have a competent defense. And if the defense could even be just marginally better than last year, then yeah, this could be a really fun team.
Is this the deepest the quarterback situation has been in quite a while? Obviously, you had Nick Foles, Matt Scott, so we'll put that one to the side. But you got Delora, you got Fafita, you got a 4-star kid in Braden Dorman. There's some real nice potential right there.
Yeah, and it's still potential. We don't know how good Fafita really is. We don't know if Delora can make another step. Again, Braden Dorman looks really good, but you know who else looked really good?
Ryan O'Hara,
Gunnell, Lyons, Bernie. You can go down the list of. Arizona's brought in a lot of 4-star guys who never.
Tyler Lyon, I forgot about him. That was a good one.
Kovalchuk. There's been a lot of 4-star guys to come in and not done that much. Because it's the hard, again, unlike what people will tell you on Twitter, it's the hardest position to recruit in sports. It's the hardest position to evaluate in the pros. We look at Burmeister, who, went to 3 different schools in Arizona.
He doesn't have another year, does he?
Who knows anymore? I can't keep it straight. Guys are playing 6-7 years. They get a transfer year, you get a medical year, you get a COVID year, you get a double secret probation COVID year. I don't know. Right.
Oh, one thing, though, that I do want to dispel a little bit here, and yes, Arizona, I am proud. My degrees are all from Arizona. But the one argument I don't get, though, is going to the Big 12 because it dilutes the Arizona degree. Arizona is not considered a top 100 university. Again, it's close, not bad, but being associated with Stanford, and I think James hits the nail on the head, Arizona's been associated with Stanford since 78 and still isn't a top 100 university. I agree with that. When people think of Arizona, when people think of ASU, they don't think of, that's next level academics. It's solid, but I don't think it's diluted at all by going to the Big 12.
Yeah, I've always wondered that. Because, do graduate programs know what athletic conference you play in? And again, Arizona's darn good school. I always joke they're the Harvard of the desert Southwest.
Right.
I don't say Southwest because UT Austin's a better school. But when you compare them, unfortunately, to Washington, to Cal, UCLA, those are public institutions. I'm not even talking the private schools that are better.
Right.
Arizona, the state schools, Utah, not a great school. Colorado, slightly better than Arizona. But do employers are employers really
Is there a difference between Kansas and Arizona, really?
Yeah, there is actually. Kansas is not a great school. Although Kansas has a very good medical school. But is an employer going to say, man, this Arizona degree, they play in the Big 12 now. And I get all the AAU stuff and the research stuff. But at the end of the day, is what athletic conference you're in really that big a deal to employers? And I don't know. Because I live in Tucson, Arizona, where I don't think I've ever lost a job because I had a U of A degree and not another degree, but I think that is probably secondary. Now, I think it can help Arizona with other conferences. I think the Big 12 would love to have a couple AAU schools.
Kansas is AAU. I thought it was.
But I know they're behind Arizona in all the usually in the rankings, because I have some family members who went to Kansas. And
you do have family members from Kansas.
So I don't know. But yeah, Arizona's a good above average state, public school, but they're not in the class of Washington and Cal and UCLA or frankly Michigan or some of those. Yeah.
All right, now I'm gonna make fun of the Big Ten here in just a second. I want to get Brad Alice's take.
Easy to do.
But first, Roman. All right, as everybody gets older, we know the deal. You start losing your testosterone to a certain extent. You start losing your libido. But guess what? Roman is here to help. Roman is the digital health clinic for men, addressing a variety of sexual health needs and offering genuine medication that helps achieve and maintain a strong erection. Roman offers discreet wipes that can help last 4 times longer. Now, here's the deal. To learn more about how you can achieve your personal sexual health goals, go to ro.co/PHNX to get 20% off your entire first order. That's ro.co/PHNX. Again, we're not in the 1960s anymore. As we get older, we got a lot of different things going on. People are out in the open about it. No waiting rooms, no hassle, straightforward digital experience from the comfort at home. Again, and many times free 2-day shipping. So again, check it out, Roman. All right. Now, Brad, the Big Ten, what maybe my biggest, and thank you again, Ricky Garrett. I was in 20-hour delay in Sacramento. Going in, it was a disaster as well. So I have never been happier to be back. Tucson kicks ass. Big Ten basketball. One of my biggest things, if there's anything that I want to be remembered for in the sports world, it's trying to expose the fraud that is Big Ten basketball. Every single year, we talk the same thing. 9 or 10 teams get in, and then not only do 9 or 10 teams get in, they're all but one bounced in the Sweet 16 or by the Sweet 16. Why does this fraud keep happening? We know it's happening, and it keeps occurring, Brad Ellis.
Because unfortunately, what we have in college sports, it's the biggest frustration, is we have the self-fulfilling prophecy. Where if we rank 9 teams from a league, then we can talk if you beat them all and you're really good, well, you're great. Mm-hmm. And if you go 500, well, it's because the league is so tough. And again, SEC football, it's the best conference in football. We get it, but it's not that much better.
Yeah, but the only thing I'm going to give you
the 8th place team in the SEC is not significantly better than the 8th place team. So when we decided at the beginning of the year that 12 Big Ten teams were great, then you can be Rutgers or Wisconsin and be on the bubble by going sub 500 in the conference because it's so darn tough. But we all knew this was coming. I thought, I think you asked me, we thought they'd get more in than they did, and I thought 2 would advance.
Right. And what's crazy?
The only one I rooted for Michigan State because I like Izzo.
Watching Purdue, though, was crazy. And again, I agree with everything you're saying about the SEC, but the SEC is still dominant at the top. The top 2 or 3 teams are all. That's not the same with them. The Big Ten is mediocre across the board, essentially. Look at Purdue. Watching them against Fairleigh Dickinson, what's crazy about that game, Brad, is that did not look like a fluke. That Purdue had Zach Edey and a bunch of guys that looked like me out there, or me and you, and they played like me and you out there. It did not look like a fluke, but every single year this keeps occurring, and it must stop at some point. I don't know what to do. I've done all that I can. The masses need to rise up, in my opinion.
And again, who would you have rather watched? And again, did Rutgers make it? I think Rutgers make it. Rutgers or Toledo, who didn't get to make it? Second place team in the MAC. Who would you have rather, again, look how fun FAU was as a 30-win team. That I'm not, yes, I'd rather dip into some, again, the true mid-majors. Again, one of my big pet peeves is we call every non-Power 5, Power 6 conference a mid-major. No, mid-major is the Mountain West, the MAC, the Conference USA. But I would have rather taken, second was a Conference USA team.
Right.
North Texas, or who was the other one? I forget now, but they all had 27, 28 wins.
Right.
I don't need to see a team that is 3 games over 500 in the NCAA tournament. I don't care. I don't care if you're playing in the NBA West. I don't want to see a team that is 7-11 in their conference in the NCAA tournament. I think you should have to win 20 games and be at least 500 in your conference, or you can't go. And that being said, if you win 30 games, I don't care if you played half your schedule with high school teams, you probably should be in the NCAA tournament, because you don't win 30 games by a fluke.
Right. So he is the great William Brad Alice. It feels good to be back on Tuesdays here at 12:30. My rooting guide, root against Alabama. They're despicable in my opinion. And you know what? I don't even care who I'm on the Muss bus. But you know what? Because let me ask you this. Does Muss keep his clothes on if they make the Final Four? Does he take his pants off?
Dude, he may be naked. And I will say this. I wanted Muss to be the Suns coach about 15 years ago. And I wanted him to be an Arizona coach about the time they were looking at Miller. Now again, Miller was I don't have any problems. Miller was the right hire, but I've been a Muss fan. I think
you've been on the Muss bus.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Since he was an assistant with like his dad.
Yes.
I thought he was, So I have trouble rooting again for that Arkansas team a little bit, but he's fun. He's obnoxious, but he's fun.
He's William Brad Alice. Yeah, he's a lot like me. I agree. He's William Brad Alice. I'm Mike Luke. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Brad will be back with you on Tuesday. You are listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.